The pain hit me during the weapons demonstration. Not the kind of pain that makes you scream. The kind that crawls up your spine like an old friend you'd rather not see. My left knee locked mid-pivot, and I felt that familiar grinding sensation that every veteran knows too well. Cartilage meeting bone. The ghost of a shrapnel wound from 3 years back, compounded by 6 months in a cryopod that hadn't quite thawed me evenly. I was supposed to be demonstrating human combat techniques to the Radiant Conclave, the governing body of the Vexari Empire, a species so advanced they'd stopped carrying physical weapons 2 centuries ago. They fought with sound, with light, with things I couldn't pronounce, let alone understand. And here I was, Sergeant Marcus Thorne, showing them how humans still used knives. The conclave hall stretched 300 meters in every direction, its walls carved from living crystal that pulsed with amber and violet light. No windows, the Vexari didn't need them. Their architecture breathed, responded to emotion and intent. Right now, the walls were cycling through cool blues, the color of polite boredom. I'd been brought here as part of the human delegation, a token military advisor to make our species look competent. Ambassador Chen had been very clear. Don't embarrass us. These people think we're primitives playing with fire. But she wasn't wrong. The Vexari watching me were all high caste, their skin translucent enough to show the faint network of light channels beneath, veins that carried bioluminescent fluid instead of blood. When they were calm, those channels glowed soft gold. When angry, they flared red. Right now, watching me demonstrate a basic knife fighting stance, most of them were showing a dismissive gray. Except for her. She sat on the central dais, surrounded by advisors who whispered into devices that looked like crystallized smoke. High Sentinel Kaeva, not quite their queen, but close enough that the distinction didn't matter. Her channels pulsed with deep violet, curiosity, I'd been told, though reading Vexari emotions was like trying to read sheet music when you'd never heard a song. I'd noticed her watching me with more attention than the others. Not admiration, more like the way you'd watch a bug doing something unexpected. My knee chose that moment to give out entirely. I caught myself on the training rail, managed to turn the stumble into something that almost looked intentional. The knife clattered to the floor. In the silence of the conclave hall, it sounded like a bell announcing my inadequacy. Someone in the gallery laughed, a sharp musical sound. Vexari didn't laugh like humans. Their laughter was melodic, crystalline, like wind chimes in a storm. The human's joints fail him, one of the advisors said, his voice amplified by the hall's acoustics. How does such a fragile species wage war? I picked up the knife, tested my weight on the bad knee. It held barely. The pain was white-hot now, radiating up my thigh. I'd had rheumatism since my mid-30s, a gift from too many cold-weather deployments and one particularly bad tour on Ganymede Station. The medical officers had offered me a dozen treatments, but none of them stuck. Something about my immune system rejecting the nanorepair tech. So I'd learned to live with it, learned to joke about it. You want to know how we wage war? I said, loud enough for the hall to hear. I straightened up, ignoring the grinding in my knee. We do it with old man joints and pure spite. Half our commanders can't run a mile without their hips locking up, but we still win. Silence. The kind that makes you realize you've said something either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. Then Kaeva laughed. Not the polite, musical sound I'd heard before. This was full-throated, unrestrained. The light channels in her throat blazed bright gold, pulsing with each breath. Her advisors froze. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath. She stood, and when a high sentinel stands, you notice. She was tall even for a Vexari, nearly 7 feet, her formal robes flowing around her like liquid mercury. The sigils on her cheeks, mark of her rank, flickered from violet to gold as she descended from the dais. He speaks of enduring pain as strategy, she said, her voice carrying that strange harmonic quality all Vexari possessed. He mocks his own weakness to claim strength. This is the doctrine of Ash. I had no idea what that meant, but the advisors were suddenly very interested. One of them, an elderly male with channels that had faded to pale silver, stepped forward with something that looked like alarm. "Sentinel, the wording." "I witnessed it clearly, Sage Thorne," Kaeva interrupted. "He invoked the old words. He declared himself tempered by endurance, refined by repeated trial. He stands before the Conclave and claims victory through persistence." She turned to me, and for the first time I saw her pupils contract, the Vexari equivalent of a sharp focus. "By the seventh accord, I name you Ashkin. You are bound as war husband under ancient rite." The words hit me like a concussion grenade. "I'm what?" The hall erupted. Not in chaos, the Vexari were too controlled for that, but in a flurry of urgent whispers and flashing light channels. The walls themselves shifted to deep red, responding to the collective shock in the room. Sage Thorne moved between us, his hands making complicated gestures that left trails of light in the air. "Sentinel Kaeva, we must convene a verification assembly. The seventh accord has not been invoked in 4 centuries. The human may not even understand." "He understood enough to speak the truth," Kaeva said. Her eyes never left mine. "A warrior who endures beyond his body's limits, who transmutes suffering into purpose. This is the essence of Ashkin. The accord is clear." I opened my mouth to protest, but Ambassador Chen was suddenly there, her face carefully neutral in that way that meant she was screaming internally. "High Sentinel," she said, her voice smooth as diplomatic ice. "I'm certain this is a misunderstanding. Sergeant Thorne was merely making a casual observation about human military culture. He wasn't invoking any formal. The seventh accord recognizes truth, not intent," Thorne said quietly. "If the words align, if the witness confirms, the bond forms. It is law older than the Conclave itself." Chen looked at me. I could see the question in her eyes. "What the hell did you say?" I replayed my words in my head. Something about fighting with bad joints and spite. How was that a marriage proposal? "Can someone explain," I said carefully, "what a war husband is?" Kaeva tilted her head, those cheek sigils pulsing now with something that might have been amusement. "A partner bound through recognition of shared doctrine. In ancient times, when the Vexari still fought physical wars, warriors would claim Ashkin to balance doctrine with practice. The war husband provides perspective the Sentinel lacks, tactical truth, unfiltered strategy." "So it's a military advisor position," I said, grasping at the least insane interpretation. "It is a binding," Thorne corrected. "Social, political, and legal. The war husband speaks with the Sentinel's authority in matters of conflict. Their decisions are joint, their fates are joined. Their quarters are shared," another advisor added helpfully. Chen's diplomatic mask slipped for just a second. "Absolutely not." "The accord does not require consent," Kaeva said, and there was something sharp in her tone now. "It requires recognition. I have recognized him. The bond is formed." "Then we'll contest it," Chen said. "Human law doesn't recognize arranged marriages, especially not ones formed by accident during a cultural exchange." "Then Sergeant Thorne may choose exile," Thorne said. "To refuse the bond once formed is to declare the Sentinel's judgment false. It is an insult that requires the human delegation's immediate removal from Vexari space." I watched Chen's face cycle through several emotions, landing on carefully controlled fury. We'd been negotiating a crucial trade agreement with the Vexari for 6 months. Losing access to their jumpgate technology would set human expansion back decades. "Give us a moment," I said. Kaeva's pupils contracted again. "The bond does not pause for deliberation." "Yeah, well, I need to talk to my people before I accidentally marry anyone else today," I said. 5 minutes. To my surprise, she nodded. 5 of your minutes, the Conclave will recess." Chen grabbed my arm and practically dragged me to one of the side chambers. The moment the door sealed behind us, she rounded on me. "Rheumatism, Marcus. You invoked a 400-year-old marriage rite because your knee hurts." "I didn't invoke anything. I made a joke." Well, your joke just got you engaged to the second most powerful person in the Vexari Empire. She paced, her fingers flying across her datapad. Okay, we can work with this. Thorne mentioned verification. Maybe we can argue that. Chen, I kept my voice level. What happens if I refuse? She stopped pacing. We lose everything, the trade agreement, the jump gate access, possibly the alliance itself. The Vexari don't bluff about honor. And if I accept, you become a political pawn in a culture we barely understand, bound to a woman who probably sees you as an amusing curiosity. She met my eyes. I can't order you to do this, but I'm asking. I thought about my knee, about the pain that would follow me for the rest of my life, no matter which planet I was on. I'd learned to live with worse. How long would the binding last? Unknown. Thorne's pulling the legal texts now. Her pad chimed. She glanced at it, frowned. Until death or mutual dissolution, which requires both parties to agree in front of the Conclave. So I'd need her permission to leave. Yes. I laughed, which made Chen flinch. 5 months ago, I was diffusing mines in the Kuiper Belt. Now I'm accidentally married to an alien queen because I complained about my joints. You know what? Fine. I accept. Marcus, we need this alliance, right? And I'm not exactly drowning in better options back home. I headed for the door. Besides, how bad can it be? The answer I would learn was significantly bad. The verification ceremony took place immediately. Sage Thorne produced a crystalline tablet that hummed with ancient text, the characters shifting and flowing like liquid. He read from it in formal Vexari, a dialect so archaic that even Kaeva's advisors struggled to follow, while the Conclave bore witness. I stood beside Kaeva on the dais, acutely aware of every eye on us. She was composed, regal, her light channels steady violet. I was pretty sure I was sweating through my dress uniform. Thorne asked me something in that flowing language. Kaeva leaned close and whispered, "He asks if you spoke truth when you claimed strength through suffering." Yeah, I said, I did. Thorne asked another question. He asks if you will stand as Ashkin to the Sentinel to provide perspective forged in trial. I looked at Kaeva. Up close, I could see the faint scars on her hands, the only visible marks on her otherwise perfect skin. Warrior's hands, I realized. She might rule from a crystal hall, but she'd fought her way here. I will, I said. The hall blazed gold. Every Vexari present lit up simultaneously, their light channels flaring with what I now recognized as approval. The walls themselves seemed to sing, resonating at a frequency I felt in my bones. Kaeva placed her hand over mine. Her skin was warm, almost feverish. Then let it be recorded. Sergeant Marcus Thorne of Earth is recognized as Ashkin, war husband to High Sentinel Kaeva. Let his words carry weight. Let his counsel be heard. The ceremony ended. The conclave dispersed, and I was left standing on the dais next to a woman I'd known for approximately 40 minutes, legally bound in a way I still didn't fully understand. We should speak, Kaeva said, privately. She led me through corridors that twisted in ways that defied geometry, the walls pulsing with soft light. We passed other Vexari, servants, guards, officials, all of whom stopped to stare. Some showed gold channels, others flared red. They're surprised, Kaeva said without looking back. The Ashkin bond hasn't been formed in living memory. Many thought it myth. Is that what I am to you? I asked. A myth. She paused at a doorway that irised open at her approach. You are a complication I did not anticipate, but the doctrine of Ash is sacred. I spoke truth when I recognized you. The room beyond was smaller than I expected, maybe 20 feet across, circular, with walls that showed the star field outside. Real windows. I realized this must be her private chamber. Sit, she said, gesturing to a low bench that adjusted its shape as I approached. Your leg pains you still. I sat, grateful. The adrenaline was wearing off, and my knee felt like someone had replaced it with broken glass. Rheumatism doesn't care about alien marriage rites. Explain this word, rheumatism. Joint inflammation, degeneration, old injuries that never quite heal. I rubbed my knee. Humans break down, our bodies betray us. We get old, we get slow, and we keep fighting anyway. She sat across from me, her posture perfect. This is why you laughed when you spoke of winning despite weakness. It's either laugh or scream. Laughing's more productive. For the first time, her formal composure cracked. Her cheek sigils flickered, gold to violet to something darker. The advisors will expect us to share quarters within the cycle, to appear unified. The bond carries political weight, especially now. Especially now. She stood, moved to the window. Against the backdrop of stars, she looked almost fragile. There is conflict brewing on the outer territories. Separatist factions who believe the Vexari have grown soft, too dependent on technology. They want to return to the old ways, blood and conquest. Her light channels pulsed red. The Conclave sees this as a minor insurgency. I know better, I have fought these people before. And binding yourself to a human helps how? The Ashkin bond sends a message that the Sentinel values endurance over perfection. That strength comes from adaptation, not purity. She turned to face me. You are propaganda, Sergeant Thorne. Useful propaganda, but propaganda nonetheless. At least she was honest. I respected that. So what do you actually need from me? Your perspective. When my advisors counsel patience, I need someone who understands urgency. When they suggest overwhelming force, I need someone who knows the cost of violence. Her pupils contracted. I need the truth that comes from surviving when survival seemed impossible. I thought about Ganymede, about the cold that had seeped into my bones during that 6-week siege, about watching good soldiers die because command was too slow, too cautious, too far away to understand what we needed. I can do that, I said, but I'm not your pet human. I'm not going to smile and nod while you use me for political theater. I would not respect you if you did. She moved closer and I caught her scent, something like ozone and honey. The bond is real, Sergeant. I did not speak lightly when I invoked the 7th accord. What I require is genuine counsel. What I offer in return is genuine partnership. Partnership implies equality. The Ashkin bond recognizes complementary strength, not identical strength. You will have authority in matters of war. I retain authority in matters of governance. Where they overlap, we decide together. It was more than I'd expected. Less than I wanted, probably the best I was going to get. Fine, I said, but we're setting ground rules, starting with sleeping arrangements. Her cheek sigils flickered with what might have been amusement. The quarters are large enough for separate chambers. I am not barbarian, despite what your expression suggests. My expression suggests I'm in pain and out of my depth. Then we are matched. I am also out of my depth. She extended her hand, palm up, a Vexari gesture of offered trust. Shall we endure together, Ashkin? I took her hand. Her skin was still fever-warm, the light channels beneath pulsing steady gold. Let's see if we survive the week first, I said. The quarters she'd mentioned turned out to be an entire wing of the Conclave complex. 3 chambers, a shared common area, and a balcony that overlooked the city below, a sprawling metropolis of crystal spires and flowing light. My room was sparse but functional, with a bed that adjusted to my body and walls that could display any environment I wanted. I chose the view from my apartment in Denver, mountains and sky. It helped. The political fallout started immediately. Ambassador Chen visited the next morning, her expression carefully neutral. How are you holding up? I've had worse roommates, I said. What's the damage? Mixed. The traditionalist faction loves it, sees it as a return to ancient values. The progressives think Kaeva's lost her mind, and the humans back home are divided between thinking you're a hero and thinking you've gone native. I've been here 36 hours. Long enough to get married, apparently. She sat across from me, her fingers drumming on the table. Marcus, I need to know if you're okay with this. Really okay. Because once we commit to supporting this bond, there's no easy exit. I thought about the conversation with Kaeva, about the way her light channels had flickered when she admitted being out of her depth. "She's using me," I said. "But she's honest about it, and she's giving me real authority in exchange. That's better than most command structures I've served under." Chen nodded slowly. "The Vexari database has been updated with your new status. You now have security clearance equivalent to a senior military advisor. That's significant." "What aren't you telling me? The separatist situation is worse than they've been publicly admitting. 3 supply stations hit in the last month. Casualties in the hundreds, and intelligence suggests they're planning something bigger." She met my eyes. "Kaeva needs a war husband because she's preparing for actual war." The pieces clicked together. The rushed binding, the political messaging, the emphasis on endurance and adaptation. She thinks the Conclave isn't ready. She knows they're not. The Vexari haven't fought a real war in 2 centuries. Their military is ceremonial. Their weapons are theoretical. Chen stood. "You're not just propaganda, Marcus. You're going to be her primary military advisor when this thing goes hot." After she left, I found Kaeva in the common area, reviewing holographic reports that flickered in the air like angry fireflies. Her light channels were steady red. "How bad?" I asked. She didn't look up. 4 more stations, simultaneous strikes. They're coordinating now, learning. A gesture and the displays shifted, and they've started broadcasting. "Listen." A voice filled the room, harsh, distorted, speaking rapid Vexari. I caught maybe 1 word in 5, but the tone was clear enough. Rage, condemnation. "They call the Conclave corrupt," Kaeva translated. "Weak. They say we've abandoned the true path by embracing alien technologies, alien ideas." Her pupils contracted. "They call you abomination, a contamination of our bloodline." "Charming. They are wrong." She dismissed the displays with a sharp gesture. "But they are also effective. They've destroyed 6 million tons of processed ore, crippled 3 manufacturing centers, and killed 273 Vexari. And the Conclave still debates whether this constitutes an emergency." I sat down, studying the tactical maps still lingering at the edge of the display. "They're hitting infrastructure, not population centers. They want to cripple your economy, force you to negotiate. Or force us to overreact, to prove their point about our brutality." She finally looked at me. "What would you do?" "In their position, I'd hit the jump gates next. Cut off your trade routes, isolate your territories. Make each sector choose between the Conclave and survival." Her light channels flickered gold, violet, red, settling on orange. "Uncertainty. You think like them." "I think like someone who's fought insurgencies. There's a pattern. Harassment, infrastructure, isolation, then direct confrontation. You're on step 2, maybe early step 3. The advisors say we need overwhelming force. Crush them before they grow stronger. And create martyrs. Validate their narrative about your brutality." I shook my head. "That's how you lose insurgencies. You need precision, not overwhelming force. Cut off their supply lines, isolate their leadership, give their followers a reason to come home." Kaeva was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer. "The Conclave will not like this approach. They want quick victory." "Quick victories don't exist against people who have nothing left to lose." I met her eyes. "Trust me, I've been on both sides of that equation." "Show me." We spent the next 4 hours going over everything the Vexari knew about the separatists. Organization, resources, suspected bases. It was frustratingly incomplete. The Vexari surveillance networks were designed to monitor external threats, not internal ones. "You're flying blind," I said finally. "You don't know their numbers, their capabilities, or their endgame. You're reacting instead of anticipating." "Then what do you suggest?" I thought about Ganymede again, about the moment we'd turned that siege around. "We need intelligence. Real intelligence. People on the ground who can tell us what the separatists actually want, what they're actually planning. Not censored data, not intercepted communications. Human, Vexari intelligence." "You want to send infiltrators?" I want to send diplomats under white flag, official offer to negotiate. I watched her channels flare red. Hear me out. You send someone they'll respect, offer real talks, and you watch who responds, how they respond, what they demand. You'll learn more in one meeting than you'll get from 6 months of surveillance. And if they kill the diplomat, then you know they're not interested in negotiation, and you adjust accordingly. But if they talk, you've opened a channel, you've shown strength through restraint, and you've bought time to actually prepare for what's coming. She paced, her robes flowing behind her like smoke. The room's walls had shifted to match her emotional state, deep red fading to orange at the edges. The Conclave will see it as weakness. The Conclave isn't here at 3 a.m, looking at casualty reports and wondering which station gets hit next. I stood, ignoring the protest from my knee. You're the High Sentinel. You don't need their permission to pursue diplomatic channels. No, but I need their support to implement any agreement that results. She stopped pacing, turned to face me fully. You truly believe this will work? I believe it's better than the alternative, and I believe you're asking the wrong question. What should I ask? Not whether it will work, whether you're willing to try something your advisors wouldn't suggest. That's what the Ashkin bond is for, right? Complementary perspective. Her cheek sigils flickered through several colors before settling on violet. You are either very wise or very foolish. Both, usually. I stretched, feeling every year of my service in my spine. It's late, we should sleep on it. Vexari do not sleep as you do. We enter meditation cycles. But she nodded. Rest, Marcus. Tomorrow I present your strategy to the Conclave. We will learn how they respond. I made it halfway to my chamber before she spoke again. Marcus. I turned. Thank you for treating this as real. Not as burden or joke or political inconvenience. Her light channels pulsed soft gold. The advisors warned me that binding a human would be disaster, that you would not understand, would not adapt. They were wrong. Give it time, I said. I haven't even embarrassed you publicly yet. I suspect you will exceed all expectations in that regard as well. Despite everything, the pain, the exhaustion, the sheer absurdity of the situation, I laughed. The Conclave meeting went about as well as expected, which is to say, poorly. I stood beside Kaeva's dais, officially present as her war husband but not permitted to speak unless directly questioned. The Conclave members arrayed below in concentric circles, their light channels flickering with a rainbow of opinions as Kaeva presented the diplomatic approach. Madness, one of the senior advisors declared, his channels blazing red. We negotiate with terrorists, and they will see only weakness. We have attempted force, Kaeva replied, her voice carrying that formal harmonic. 6 stations attacked, nearly 300 dead. The separatists grow bolder, not weaker. Perhaps force alone is insufficient. Perhaps our force has been insufficient, another advisor countered. Deploy the Resonance Fleet. End this in one stroke. I'd seen the Resonance Fleet specs. They could level a small moon. Using them on Vexari separatists would be like using nuclear weapons on protesters. Sage Thorne raised his hand for recognition. The Ashkin bond was formed so that the Sentinel might receive counsel forged in conflict. Perhaps we should hear what the war husband offers. All eyes turned to me. I'd been briefed on proper Conclave protocol: speak when recognized, use formal address, defer to the Sentinel in all matters. I ignored most of it. You want to use the Resonance Fleet? I said. Fine, you'll win. You'll kill every separatist in the targeted sector, along with everyone else in the blast radius. You'll prove their point about your brutality. And you'll radicalize 3 more sectors in the process. I looked around the chamber. I've fought insurgencies. You don't beat them by being scarier than they are. You beat them by being smarter. The human speaks of matters beyond his comprehension, the red-channeled advisor said. The human speaks from experience your people haven't had in 200 years, I shot back. You've built a beautiful civilization on the principle that violence is obsolete. Congratulations, but violence isn't obsolete for the people you're fighting. And unless you understand that, you're going to lose. The chamber erupted in flashing lights and overlapping voices. Kaeva raised her hand and silence fell. Enough. The war husband speaks truth that discomforts us. That is his purpose. She stood. I will pursue diplomatic contact with the separatist leadership. Simultaneously, we will reinforce critical infrastructure and improve intelligence gathering. If negotiation fails, we will have better understanding of what force is actually required. And if they see this as opportunity to strike while we hesitate, someone challenged, then we respond with precision, not panic. Kaeva's channels blazed violet. The conclave is dismissed. I followed her out through a side exit, aware of the stairs tracking our movement. That went well, I said once we were alone. You made enemies. I made points, there's a difference. She actually smiled, the first I'd seen from her. It transformed her face, made her look younger. My advisors are already demanding I rescind the bond. They say you are dangerous influence. Are you going to? No, she kept walking, because they are wrong. You are exactly the influence I required. Over the next week, I learned what being war husband actually meant. It meant sitting through A-Tower strategy sessions, where Vexari generals explained theoretical combat scenarios that assumed perfect conditions and unlimited resources. It meant reviewing supply chain logistics for stations I'd never heard of, in sectors I couldn't pronounce. It meant learning to read Vexari emotional displays well enough to know when someone was lying, stalling, or genuinely confused. It meant sleeping 4 hours a night and waking up with my knee feeling like someone had filled it with ground glass. And it meant working alongside Kaeva in a partnership that was becoming less political theater and more genuine collaboration. She was brilliant. I'd known that from the first meeting. But watching her work, seeing how she navigated conclave politics while simultaneously running military operations, I gained a new appreciation for the weight she carried. You don't sleep at all, do you? I asked one night, finding her in the common area at what I'd started thinking of as 3 a.m. even though Vexari timekeeping was completely different. Meditation is sufficient. Meditation is not sleep. I sat beside her stretching my bad leg. You're going to burn out. Vexari do not burn out as humans do. Everyone burns out eventually, even perfect crystalline light beings. Her channels flickered gold. We are not perfect. We are simply better at hiding imperfection. That's the most human thing I've heard you say. She was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the armrest. The separatist leadership responded to our overture. They will meet, but they have conditions. Of course they do. What kind? They want the meeting on neutral ground. No conclave guards, no weapons, no surveillance. Her pupils contracted, and they want you present. That surprised me. Why? They say the Ashkin bond proves the Sentinel has abandoned true Vexari values. They want to see this corruption for themselves. She turned to face me. It is trap, of course. They hope to provoke you to make you appear foolish, to make me appear weak for binding you. Or they're genuinely curious whether I'm a walking insult to their worldview. That as well. I thought about it. Neutral ground meant vulnerability. No guards meant trusting people who'd been killing Vexari by the hundreds. Going unarmed meant relying on words when violence might be simpler. It was exactly the kind of diplomatic nightmare I'd spent my career avoiding. When do we leave? I asked. Her channels blazed bright gold. You agree. You need to talk to these people. I need to understand what they actually want. And yeah, they're probably planning to humiliate us, but maybe that's what it takes to open a real dialogue. I met her eyes. Besides, I've been humiliated before. I survived. Marcus. She placed her hand over mine, the second time she'd done that since the bonding ceremony. If this becomes dangerous, then we deal with it, together. That's the whole point of this partnership, right? We left 2 days later on a small transport, just Kaeva, me, and a pilot who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. The meeting point was an abandoned mining platform in the outer territories, far from any active Vexari presence. The platform was exactly as depressing as it sounded: rusted metal and failing atmospheric processors, floating in the dark between inhabited systems. We docked, and the pilot sealed herself in the cockpit while Kaeva and I stepped into the platform's main chamber. They were waiting for us. 5 Vexari, all wearing armor that looked ceremonial but functional. Their light channels burned red, and their weapons, physical weapons, human-style rifles, were very visible. The leader stepped forward. She was older, her channels faded to pale orange, scars visible on her neck. A veteran, I realized. Someone who'd actually fought. "High Sentinel," she said, her voice rough. "You honor us with your presence, and you bring your pet." "War husband," Kaeva corrected. "Speak with respect, Commander Syleth, or this conversation ends." Syleth's channels flared brighter red. "War husband, Ashkin, ancient titles for ancient weakness. You bind yourself to this, creature, and claim strength." "I claim perspective," Kaeva said calmly. "Something the Conclave has lacked. Something you lack as well if your strategy is murder without purpose." "Purpose?" Syleth laughed harsh, nothing like Kaeva's musical sound. "Our purpose is clear: to purge the rot before it destroys us, to return to what made us strong." I'd been quiet, letting them talk, but something about Syleth's tone triggered recognition. I'd heard it before on Ganymede from the insurgent commander we'd eventually captured. Desperation masquerading as conviction. "What made you strong?" I asked. Everyone turned to stare at me. Syleth's channels shifted to something darker, orange shot through with red. "The human speaks. The human asks a question. What made you strong? Specifically. Because from where I'm standing, all I see is a group of soldiers attacking supply stations and calling it revolution. You know nothing of our history, our struggles. I know you're not winning. I know your casualties are mounting. I know you're running out of stations to hit before you're forced into direct confrontation with the Resonance fleet, and then this whole thing ends with you as ash in the dark." I stepped forward, ignoring the rifles that tracked my movement. "So I'll ask again, what are you actually fighting for?" Syleth was silent for a long moment. Then, "We fight for survival. For the right to exist as we were, before the Conclave decided technology could replace honor. Before we became soft, dependent, weak." "You think the Conclave is weak?" "I know it is. They rely on systems that can fail, weapons they no longer understand, allies." Her eyes flickered to me. "Who will abandon them when convenience fades." "And you rely on what? Old armor and older grudges." I shook my head. "You're not fighting for strength. You're fighting because you're terrified of change. Because adaptation looks like surrender to you." Her channels blazed pure red. "How dare?" "I dare because I've been where you are. Watching my world change, my skills become obsolete, my body break down. And you know what I learned?" I gestured to my knee. "Fighting change just makes it hurt worse. Adaptation isn't weakness, it's survival." Pretty words from a creature who conquered nothing, built nothing, stands for nothing beyond his own comfort. I stand for making it to tomorrow without getting my people killed for my pride. I held her gaze. "You want to know why Kaeva bound me? Not because I'm perfect. Because I'm broken in ways she isn't, and that gives me perspective she needs. That's not weakness. That's tactical advantage." Syleth looked at Kaeva. "You truly believe this?" "I believe the Ashkin bond recognizes truth," Kaeva said. "The truth that endurance matters more than perfection. That wisdom comes from surviving failure, not avoiding it." Her channels pulsed violet. "You call us weak, Commander. But you are the ones hiding in the dark, striking from shadows. If you truly believed in strength, you would face us openly. If we faced you openly, you would unleash the Resonance fleet. Perhaps we would listen." Kaeva moved forward, positioning herself beside me. "You agreed to this meeting. That suggests you want something beyond blood and fire. Tell me what that is." The chamber was silent, except for the hum of failing processors. Syleth's channels flickered, red to orange to something paler. "We want recognition," she said finally. The right to maintain our traditions, our way of life, without conclave interference. The right to teach our children physical combat, to honor the old doctrines, to exist as Vexari without apology. And the attacks were meant to force negotiation, to prove we could not be ignored. Silith's voice was quieter now. We did not want war, we wanted respect. Kaeva was still for a long moment. Then, respect cannot be demanded through violence, but neither should it require abandoning your identity. She paused. What if the Conclave recognized autonomous cultural zones, territories where traditional practices could be maintained, taught, honored, without secession, without violence? You would allow this? I would propose it to the Conclave, with the understanding that violence ends, completely, and that you participate in the political process instead of attempting to destroy it. Silith looked at her companions. They had a brief, silent conversation through channels I couldn't read. Finally, she turned back. We will consider this, but we need guarantees, real guarantees, not conclave promises. The Ashkin bond is my guarantee, Kaeva said. My war husband will verify compliance on both sides. He has no stake in our internal politics. His judgment will be unbiased. I absolutely did have stakes in their internal politics now, but I understood what Kaeva was offering. Neutral arbitration. Someone both sides could theoretically trust because I wasn't fully part of either. And if violations occur, Silith asked, then both sides know and both sides respond accordingly. Transparency instead of suspicion. Kaeva extended her hand, palm up. I offer this in good faith, Commander. Will you meet me there? Silith stared at that offered hand for what felt like an eternity. Her channels shifted, red to orange to pale gold. Then she took it. The negotiations that followed took 3 weeks and nearly broke everyone involved. The Conclave fought every concession. The separatists demanded impossible guarantees. And I spent most of my time shuttling between both sides, translating frustration into compromise. My knee got worse. The stress, the constant travel, the inadequate sleep, all of it compounded into pain that made walking an exercise in stubbornness. I stopped hiding it, stopped pretending I was fine, partly because I was too exhausted to keep up the act, partly because Kaeva noticed anyway. You should see the medical technicians, she said one evening, finding me in my chamber, ice pack pressed to my swollen knee. They can't fix it, we tried back home. Vexari medicine is more advanced. Vexari medicine works on Vexari biology. Human immune systems don't play nice with your nanotech. I adjusted the ice pack. I'll live. I always do. She sat beside me, close enough that I could see the fine detail of her light channels, the way they pulsed with each breath. You endure much for people who are not your own. Your people are my people now, legally. Politically, painfully. I smiled at my own joke. Besides, ending this mess helps humanity too. We need your alliance. Is that all this is to you? Strategic necessity. I thought about that. About the past weeks working beside her, learning to read her moods through channel color and pupil dilation. About the way she listened when I spoke, really listened, instead of just waiting for her turn to talk. No, I said. It stopped being just strategy a while ago. Her channels flickered, violet to gold to something warmer. She reached out, her fingers hovering over my knee. May I? I nodded. She placed her hand over the ice pack, and I felt warmth spread through the joint. Not healing. Vexari couldn't heal human tissue any more than we could heal theirs, but comfort. The heat of her skin against the cold of the ice, creating a strange equilibrium that actually helped. Thank you, I said. You thank me for small kindness while negotiating peace that could save thousands. Her channels pulsed steady gold now. I do not understand you, Marcus Thorne. Yeah, well, I'm still figuring you out too. We sat like that until the ice melted and my knee stopped screaming. It wasn't a cure. It wasn't a solution. But it was something, and sometimes something is enough. The final agreement was signed in the radiant conclave hall, with representatives from both sides present. Autonomous cultural zones would be established. Traditional practices would be protected, violence would cease, and I would serve as neutral observer, reporting violations to both Kaeva and the separatist leadership. It wasn't perfect, it wouldn't solve everything, but it was a start. Ambassador Chen cornered me after the ceremony. "You did it. You actually pulled this off." "Kaeva did it, I just translated." "You did more than translate." She glanced across the hall to where Kaeva stood surrounded by advisors. "The bond, it's real now, isn't it? Not just political theater." I didn't answer, which was answer enough. Chen smiled. "Well, at least you've got good timing. Command is recommending you for extended diplomatic service. Apparently having a human in the Vexari government is useful for ongoing alliance building." "You're telling me I'm stuck here?" "I'm telling you you're exactly where you need to be." She clapped my shoulder. "Try not to start any more accidental revolutions." That night I found Kaeva on the balcony watching the city lights below. Her channels were soft violet contemplation I'd learned. "Successful day," I said. "Fragile success. The agreement will be tested. Some will break it, some will push boundaries." She didn't look at me. "But it is more than we had before." That's usually how peace works. Messy, imperfect, better than the alternative. "Is that what you sought when you made your joke about rheumatism? Peace?" I laughed. I was just trying to get through a demonstration without falling over. Everything else was accident. "Fortunate accident." She turned to face me. "The advisors still demand I rescind the bond. They say it has served its purpose, that maintaining it creates unnecessary complications." My chest tightened. "And what do you say?" "I say the bond was formed in truth and remains truth." Her channels blazed gold. "I say that I have learned more from my war husband than from a decade of advisors who tell me only what I wish to hear." She moved closer. "I say that if you wish to leave, I will grant dissolution. But I hope you will stay." I thought about Denver, about the mountains and the sky and the apartment that probably didn't remember me anymore. I thought about my knee and my career, and the quiet life I'd imagined for myself after service. Then I thought about Kaeva's laugh that first day, about negotiations in dark platforms and late-night strategy sessions, about the way her light channels had pulsed with genuine concern when she'd pressed warmth into my aching joint. "I'll stay," I said, "war husband and all, on one condition." "Name it." "We keep learning, both of us. No more just using each other strategically. If we're doing this, we do it as actual partners." Her channels cycled through colors I'd never seen before, landing on warm gold shot through with violet. "Partners," she repeated, testing the word. "Yes, I would like that very much." She took my hand, and this time when our skin touched, it felt less like political gesture and more like promise. The city lights sparkled below us, and somewhere in the outer territories, former enemies were laying down weapons and trying something new. It wasn't the life I'd planned. But then again, neither was rheumatism or space stations or any of the 1,000 other things that had shaped who I'd become. Sometimes the best things are the ones you never see coming. "So," Kaeva said, her voice soft in the darkness, "tell me more about this Denver. I wish to understand the place that forged such stubbornness." I laughed and started talking, my knee aching and my future uncertain, and my accidentally acquired alien wife listening with genuine interest as I described home. "Yeah, I could work with this,"